This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Today's talk focuses on 10 Tesla secrets to the company's handling of the coronavirus. And we also have our usual health tips as well as our cybersecurity tips at the end of the show. This is Greg for Tesla. We wanted to first say thank you to our Patreon supporters as well as our subscribers. Just to note, Patreon supporters at the top level are getting an extra 5 shows a week, primarily focused on trading strategies relative to Tesla. And several of our viewers have actually made millions of dollars in the process of using that information for trading. We also want to thank our subscribers. If you enjoyed the show, please take time to like and subscribe. So today's show is kind of focused on the fact that there are a lot of folks nervous about the coronavirus and its impact on Tesla and its business prospects. And there's a number of ways in which Tesla really has an advantage over competing firms in this space. So we wanted to review those today. The first is the Dreadnought factory. As you know, Elon has really worked hard to figure out a way to get factories built where it's primarily robots that are running the show, and therefore you don't need as many people, hopefully lowering the cost long term. But in the case of the coronavirus, you potentially have the fact that you have fewer workers on the floor means that you have the potential for reducing the chance that sick workers might affect your productivity. So in general, factories, at least Toyota is running 25% automated. Tesla's actually running approximately 80% automated, particularly when we look at what's going to go on with the Model Y performance. And so, therefore, we think that that's advantage number one is just the Dreadnought. If you look over my shoulder, you'll notice the B-roll we chose today is the assembly plant or process where Model 3 is being put together using robots. And I think it really highlights this sort of Dreadnought. Notice in the back, you'll notice a number of workers kind of waiting in the rear in case they're needed for some reason to stop the line and assist the robots. But I think this is a pretty positive circumstance. The second thing that we wanted to look at is number of moving parts. As you all know, there are 17 moving parts in sort of the engine, if you will, of this vehicle. Those are mostly in the form of the motor, etc. But there are a lot of advantages that go with 17 moving parts. The biggest one is that, frankly, the number of suppliers that you have or might need for those 17 moving parts is a lot lower than an ICE vehicle where you have 2,000 parts to keep track of that go into most of those vehicles. And so another sort of component of this is that not only is Tesla 80% integrated when it comes to production on the floor in terms of robots, you also have a closing on 80% integration when it comes to Tesla's ability to make its own inventory. So you have a supply chain that's 80% Tesla only, and clearly the batteries represent 50% of it. But the general point is Tesla's able to control access to suppliers and supplies coming in because they control more of the supply chain. The next issue is employee headcount. Yes, they had some higher numbers initially, but basically one of the big discussions that analysts were making is that Tesla was doing a routine where instead of the usual $50,000 employee, they had more $30,000 employee with $700,000 machines. They were helping put the car together. So it looked kind of like a bad idea initially, but as you have those machines working well and over time, you end up with facilities that are able to handle that. Another component of this is that if you look in the battery packs as well as the motor production in Reno, again, heavily automated. Most of the employees there, or the larger number, are actually Panasonic employees working on batteries. But in general, you have a reduced headcount and very, very heavy automation in the production of the motors and definitely the battery packs in that facility. Obviously, Panasonic has a lot of automation when it comes to producing several million batteries a day from that plant. The next thing that popped up relative to Tesla's advantages with the coronavirus is a concept that's called seasonality. So what's actually happening is that usually the auto industry has a certain seasonality of when people are building and mostly buying cars. As you know, usually the model year starts in late summer or September and sort of ends in May, June. And so one of the question marks is, how does Tesla do relative to the usual seasonality? And the reality is that as soon as their vehicles are ready to go, they've got a long list of people who've paid their deposits and ready to buy. And so Tesla does not have the same seasonality of vehicle sort of production and ordering that other vehicles have, because many of those vehicles are brand new and have a long waiting list of paid customers ready to buy them. So you really don't have to worry about things like, like in China, their sales facilities were shut down, but there was no problem for customers to order and have the vehicles delivered to their home despite issues with the coronavirus. The next issue is upgrades and other sort of changes to the vehicle. Because you're doing over-the-air upgrades and downgrades, as needed, you have a situation where Tesla also has an advantage there, because they can actually gain revenue and add features to vehicles without necessarily having to have those vehicles on site. So, as you roll through this long list of Tesla competitive advantages, a question starts to pop up, which is, wait a second, if Tesla has all these advantages relative to coronavirus, and that's associated with their electric vehicles, what about some of the major names out there as the virus hits? And the answer is, yes, competing firms are really seeing impacts on their supply chains, particularly in China, but we would expect it to start affecting competing companies around the world, but again, more so because they have larger numbers of participants in their supply chain, and therefore a larger number of entities that they're relying on to get the job done. So this sort of brings us on to, we have a quiz question for you guys. We looked it up in Fiverr, and we found, so one of the issues that's coming in right now is, how's Tesla's production doing relative to target for this quarter, given that China was slowed down, even though the United States has continued to produce without any slowdown thus far from the virus. We're expecting Tesla to meet or exceed their numbers, primarily because while China was slowed down, their numbers initially weren't impacting what was expected from Tesla. And now that they're back up and running, we expect them to try and catch up with expected internal numbers for what their production might be. So this brings up the next question. So how are things going in Fremont? And the answer is, now that the Model Y is here and starting to be delivered starting Wednesday of this coming week, I think, it almost gives us a month. It's more like 3 weeks worth of Model Y production to add to the production of other vehicles. So right now, it's our estimate that Tesla is running flat out. We actually do have a question for friends of the show. One of the things we've asked you in the past is to take pictures of your local service facilities, so we can kind of use that to gauge how the quarter might have gone for Tesla. What we're thinking about doing is hiring a photographer. I guess the charge that we see being asked is about $65 per effort. And the goal was to just have someone go by the finished product lane at Tesla and just take a couple of photos every couple of days. And we can get a feel for colors of vehicle being ordered, number of cars coming off. Because we're not floating a drone there on a 24-hour basis, it's hard to get exactly a count of how many vehicles are coming out. But the question mark is, would you be willing to chip in for our $65 every couple of days needs to get a drone up or get photos coming so that we can include that, because I think by being able to add that every few days to our shows and counting up numbers that we see and other data points that come from it, I think it lends itself to us having a better understanding of what's going on and being able to extrapolate from that how the quarter is going. And I think it'll definitely enhance sort of the investment process that folks are doing. So let us know if you're interested in joining us in this effort. We'd love to have your support in that regard. One other quiz question we have going is that we've had a number of people ask about, I've been working on an options trading book, and we've had a number of requests, comments regarding it, because we've had a lot of friends who've benefited from our advice to do very well in that space. And the question was, we were thinking about setting up a Patreon or a Kickstarter page to help fund that book. And part of the process of Kickstarter is that you pre-purchase a number of copies, a copy or a number of copies, and that funding process helps us pay for an editor to help pull the book together. So if this is something you think that you'd be willing to support or interested in, drop us a note at admin@teslafaninsight.com. And if we at least get 100 people that have expressed interest in the book coming out, that sort of gives us the room. The question is, how much is it going to be? My guess at this point is somewhere in the $25, maybe $30 range is what we're expecting it to be, because this gives us the funds to actually pay for someone to actually work on that full time and get it knocked out pretty quickly so that all of you can benefit from that knowledge. If you are interested in options heavily, we do have an options tab on our playlist for all the shows we've done on options. We're likely to include not only written material, but also video that goes through a number of options circumstances that we've come through in the recent past on Tesla, etc. So in conclusion, I just, for this portion of the show, we just wanted to point out that yes, the coronavirus is a problem, and it's a problem for a lot of different businesses. It's our belief that Tesla is actually well suited because of the Dreadnought structure to minimize the impact, being able to have new employees brought in if employees get sick and be able to replace them without a major league disruption in their ability to produce. So we look forward to the company being able to weather this storm nicely and still deliver the numbers necessary to actually do very well for all the stakeholders that are associated with it. The other thing to note is that Tesla does have the option of maybe shipping some production to China that could be shipped globally if they do have any shutdowns that might occur at the Fremont factory, is another thought that one might consider as well. So, I think Elon, I can see why he made the comment that it was kind of dumb to worry about that, because there are folks going to be concerned about it, and it's going to affect the stock on a temporary basis. But if Tesla's able to deliver numbers and during the numeric delivery in April, articulate their ability to operate effectively without any worries, I think it's going to have a major league upward draft on the stock in the process. So definitely some things to think about there. Hope you find our top 10 reasons useful and also comforting relative to what's going on with new finds of more folks. Stanford, as it should be noted, is one of the first universities in the country, along with the University of Washington, to shut down all sort of teaching class circumstances in order to reduce the chance of the virus's spread. And we do have a lot of both international students as well as international workers in different areas. And I'm told one of our doctors actually contracted it and is part of the reason for Stanford shutting down at this point their classroom activities. So the next thing, obviously, we usually cover is a little bit of cybersecurity. Just wanted to encourage you to be aware of identity theft and other challenges that can pop up with this. Please make a point of updating things like your virus protection, et cetera, because you get the latest sort of defense from virus attacks in that process, and it gives you a better chance of managing your way through any attacks that might be occurring from different entities out there. The next thing we'd like to review is our usual health tips. I wanted to encourage you to think about a couple of times of weightlifting a week as a way to improve bone density. Don't go to bed within 4 hours of eating, at least 2 hours to allow the food to digest before. That way it doesn't cause any acid reflux issues. We also wanted to encourage you to think about a 30 SPF, particularly with sunshine around, because it prevents skin cancer, and 5-2 diet or something of that ilk might be a bad idea as well, as a way to prevent issues in the sort of mental health space as you age as well. We also welcome other medical professionals to share ideas that our viewers can add to the sort of healthy life process plan, and eager to add if possible. At any rate, this is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. Tschüss, mach's gut, German, au revoir, French, licht, rot, Hebrew, choda hafez, Farsi, hejdo, Swedish, Zdravstvuyte, hello in Russian, ni hao ma, hello in Chinese, and we also we have more languages to learn, particularly Korean is my next. I wanted to say hejdo and Swedish. And in Jamaica, we say enough respect, walk good man. Thanks for your time. Have a great day. Bye for now.